Captain Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cool metal of the observation deck's viewport, watching the swirling nebula of Kepler 442 stretch across the infinite darkness of space. The USS Endeavour had been traveling for 3 months now, following distress signals that seemed to originate from somewhere deep within the unexplored Draco constellation. What made these signals unusual wasn't their origin, but their nature. They weren't mechanical or digital. They were organic, almost like the cry of some massive creature in pain. "Captain, we're picking up the signal again," called out Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun from the communication station. Her usually steady voice carried a note of concern. "It's stronger now, much stronger. Whatever's making this sound, we're getting close." Elena turned from the viewport, her weathered face reflecting years of deep space exploration. At 45, she had seen more of the galaxy than most people could imagine, but nothing had prepared her for the haunting melody that had been following them across star systems. The sound was beautiful and terrible at the same time, like a whale's song crossed with the death cry of a god. "Can you triangulate the source?" she asked, moving to the center of the bridge where the holographic display showed their current position relative to nearby star systems. "Working on it now," Chun replied, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "The signal appears to be coming from a planet in the Draconis system, roughly 12 light hours from our current position. But, Captain, there's something else. The planet isn't on any of our star charts." Elena frowned. The Galactic Survey had mapped this sector extensively over the past 50 years. For a planet to exist without being cataloged was nearly impossible, especially one large enough to generate signals this powerful. "Are you certain about the coordinates?" "Positive, ma'am. I've run the calculations 3 times. The planet is definitely there, and it's big. Preliminary scans suggest it's roughly the size of Jupiter, but with a solid surface. The gravitational readings are off the charts." Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from his research station with excitement gleaming in his eyes. "Captain, I've been analyzing the acoustic properties of these signals for weeks. The mathematical complexity is extraordinary. This isn't random noise or even simple communication. The patterns suggest an intelligence far beyond anything we've encountered." Elena nodded slowly. During her 20-year career with the Exploration Corps, she had made first contact with 17 different alien species. Each encounter had taught her to approach the unknown with equal parts caution and curiosity. "What kind of intelligence are we talking about, Doctor?" Webb pulled up a 3-dimensional waveform analysis on his screen. The patterns were hypnotic, flowing like liquid music through digital space. The neural complexity required to generate these patterns would need a brain roughly the size of a small building. "We're looking at an organism with cognitive capabilities that might dwarf our own, or multiple organisms working in harmony," suggested Commander Jackson Torres, the ship's first officer. A veteran of the border wars, Torres had learned to consider military implications in every situation. "Captain, with respect, we should proceed with extreme caution. An intelligence this advanced could pose a significant threat to Earth if it proves hostile." Elena understood his concerns, but something about the signals felt different from the aggressive posturing they had encountered with hostile species. The tone suggests distress, not aggression. Whatever's making these sounds is in pain, possibly dying. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep from various monitoring stations. Through the viewport, the nebula continued its eternal dance, beautiful and indifferent to the drama unfolding aboard the human vessel. "Captain," Chin called out again, her voice tight with urgency. "The signal is changing. The frequency is dropping rapidly, and the amplitude is decreasing. If this creature is dying, I don't think it has much time left." Elena made her decision. "Set course for the Draconis system, maximum warp. I want us there in 6 hours." "Ma'am," Torres interjected, "regulations require us to contact Starfleet Command before making first contact with any unknown intelligence." "Then, we'd better hope this creature can survive the 3-week round trip for communications," Elena replied sharply. "Sometimes regulations have to take a back seat to doing what's right." This is clearly a distress call, and we're the only ones in position to respond. As the Endeavor's engines powered up to maximum thrust, the ship began its race across the void toward the mysterious planet and its suffering inhabitant. Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover something that would change humanity's place in the universe forever. 6 hours later, the Endeavor dropped out of warp at the edge of the Draconis system. What they saw defied all expectations. The planet hung before them like a massive green and blue jewel, easily 4 times the size of Earth, but somehow maintaining an atmosphere dense enough to support life. Vast mountain ranges stretched across continents that could swallow entire star systems, and oceans deeper than any found in human space reflected the light of the system's binary suns. Incredible, breathed Dr. Webb. The biodiversity readings are off the scale. This planet supports more species than the entire Terra Nova colony cluster combined. Captain, Chun reported, the signal is coming from the largest continent. The source appears to be in a mountain range near what looks like a massive crater or valley system. Elena studied the tactical display showing the planet's surface features. The crater Chun had identified was enormous, easily 1,000 kilometers across and perfectly circular. Whatever had created it must have been a cataclysmic event. Take us into orbit and begin a detailed scan of that crater region, she ordered. But keep us at a safe distance. If there's something down there capable of generating signals this powerful, I want to know what we're dealing with before we get too close. As the Endeavor settled into high orbit, the ship's advanced sensors began painting a detailed picture of the planet's surface. The crater wasn't empty, as they had initially assumed. Instead, it contained what appeared to be a vast city of impossible architecture. Spires that reached toward the sky like crystalline needles, platforms that floated without visible support, and at the center of it all, something that made the entire crew stop what they were doing and stare. "Dear God," whispered Torres. Lying in the center of the city was a creature so massive that at first glance, it appeared to be a mountain range itself. Scales the size of buildings caught the sunlight like mirrors, and wings that could have covered entire countries lay folded against a body that stretched for kilometers. Even from orbit, they could see the slow, labored rise and fall of its breathing. "It's a dragon," said Chun in a voice filled with wonder and disbelief. An actual dragon. Dr. Webb was already running every scan the ship possessed. The biometric readings are incredible. This creature is ancient beyond measure. Carbon dating suggests it's at least 50,000 years old. And it's dying, Captain. Its cellular activity is declining rapidly. Elena felt her heart racing as she processed the implications. Dragons were creatures of myth and legend in human culture, stories told to children about magical beasts from a time that never existed. Yet here was proof that such creatures were not only real, but were intelligent enough to call for help across the vastness of space. The city around it, Torres observed, studying the tactical display. Those structures aren't natural. Something built them. Or someone, Elena corrected. "Dr. Webb, are you detecting any other life signs in the area?" Webb shook his head. The dragon is the only large life form in the immediate vicinity. But, Captain, the technology readings from those structures are fascinating. They're generating their own power through some kind of quantum manipulation I've never seen before. Elena made another command decision that would echo through history. "Prepare an away team. We're going down there." "Captain, I strongly advise against," Torres began. "Noted, Commander. But we came out here to explore and make contact with alien life. Well, we found alien life, and it's asking for our help. I won't turn my back on a dying creature just because it happens to look like something from our mythology." The away team consisted of Elena, Dr. Webb, Lieutenant Chun, and a security detail led by Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez. As their shuttle descended through the planet's atmosphere, the true scale of what they were approaching became clear. The dragon wasn't just large, it was geological in its proportions. Each scale was the size of a spacecraft, and its head alone could have housed a small city. "Captain," Chen reported from the pilot's seat. I'm picking up energy signatures from the structures around the dragon. Some kind of technology is still active down there. As they drew closer, they could see that the crystalline spires were actually some kind of medical equipment. Streams of energy flowed between them and the dragon's body, and the air shimmered with what appeared to be healing energy. Someone's been trying to save it, Webb observed. This entire city is basically a massive medical facility built around a single patient. They sat down on a platform near the dragon's head, and Elena felt a moment of vertigo as she realized the creatures I was larger than their entire shuttle. As they disembarked, wearing environmental suits as a precaution, the dragon's massive eye opened and focused on them with an intelligence that was unmistakably sapient. The dragon's voice, when it came, wasn't heard so much as felt. It resonated through the ground, through the air, through their very bones. The universal translator struggled with the language, but gradually, words began to form. Small ones, you came across the void to answer my call. Elena stepped forward, removing her helmet to show her face in a gesture of trust and respect. We heard your distress signal. We've come to help if we can. The dragon's massive eye blinked slowly, and when it spoke again, there was something that might have been hope in its voice. Help! Yes, I need help, but not for myself. I am Drakmer, last of the eternal flame, guardian of this world for 50 millennia. I am dying, as was always destined. But my children are in danger. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the alien atmosphere. What children? Where are they? Taken, Drakmer whispered, the word carrying pain that seemed to crack the very air around them. Taken by the Devourers, the darkness that consumes worlds. They came while I was weak, while the long sleep had taken my strength. They took my children to feed their hunger for innocent life. Dr. Webb was recording everything, his scientific mind racing to process the implications. Captain, if this creature is telling the truth about being 50,000 years old, it may have witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations in this sector. How many children? Elena asked, her heart already knowing that she was about to commit humanity to something far beyond their current capabilities. 7 young ones, Drakmer replied, not yet grown to their full power. Vulnerable. The Devourers will drain them slowly, savoring their fear and pain before consuming their essence entirely. Elena looked around at her away team. She could see the same mixture of determination and terror in their eyes that she felt in her own heart. They were explorers, not warriors. Their ship was designed for scientific research and peaceful contact, not for rescuing dragon children from cosmic horrors. But as she looked into Drakmer's ancient eyes, she knew that turning away wasn't an option. Humanity had reached the stars by never abandoning those who needed help, regardless of the cost. Where did they take your children? She asked. Drakmer's massive head shifted slightly, and Elena felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. Beyond the veil of stars, to the dead system, they have made their feeding ground. A place where no light can survive, where hope itself withers and dies. Even I, in my prime, would have struggled against their numbers. But you're asking us to try. I'm dying, small one. In days, perhaps hours, my flame will be extinguished forever. But your species burns with a fire I have not seen in the younger races. There's something in your spirit, something that might, just might, be able to penetrate the darkness that surrounds the Devourers. Elena felt the weight of the universe settling on her shoulders. She thought of her crew, of Earth, of the countless human colonies that depended on ships like the Endeavor for their safety and survival. But she also thought of 7 young dragons, creatures of impossible beauty and power, trapped in a cosmic nightmare beyond imagination. We'll need to know everything you can tell us about these Devourers, she said finally. Their strengths, their weaknesses, anything that might help us free your children. Drakmer's eyes brightened with something that might have been a last spark of hope in the universe. Then, you will attempt this impossible thing? Elena looked at her team one more time, seeing her own resolve reflected in their faces. We didn't come this far across the galaxy to walk away from someone who needs our help. Dragon or not, parent or not, nobody deserves to watch their children suffer while they die helpless." As if in response to her words, the energy streams from the crystalline spires pulsed brighter, and for a moment, Drakmer seemed to grow younger before their eyes. "Then, I will give you what knowledge I can, brave small ones. And perhaps the darkness that has ruled this galaxy for so long will finally meet its match in the fire that burns in human hearts." The first phase of humanity's greatest adventure was about to begin, and Elena Vasquez had just committed her species to a war they didn't understand against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. But in Drakmer's ancient eyes, she saw something that made every risk worthwhile: the desperate love of a parent for their children, a love that transcended species, size, and the vast emptiness of space itself. As the twin suns of the Draconis system set behind the mountain peaks, casting long shadows across the impossible city, Elena knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Humanity was about to discover their true purpose among the stars, and it would begin with 7 dragon children who needed heroes more than they had ever needed anything in their long, magical lives. The knowledge transfer from Drakmer took place over the course of 18 hours, during which the ancient dragon shared 50,000 years of memories, wisdom, and terror. Elena and her team remained on the surface while the rest of the crew worked frantically to prepare the Endeavor for what everyone knew would be a suicide mission. Dr. Webb had established a direct neural interface with Drakmer using a modified version of the ship's universal translator. The experience left him pale and shaking, but his eyes burned with new understanding. "Captain, what I've learned changes everything we thought we knew about this galaxy. The Devourers aren't just another hostile species. There's something far worse." Elena sat in the makeshift command center they had established near Drakmer's massive head, studying the data streams flowing across her portable console. "Explain it to me, Doctor." Webb pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy from a perspective humanity had never seen before. Instead of the familiar spiral of stars and planets, it was marked with vast, dark regions that seemed to absorb light itself. "The Devourers are entropy incarnate," he began, his voice hoarse from hours of translation work. "They don't just kill life, they consume the very possibility of life. Everywhere they go, they leave dead space where nothing can ever grow again." "How is that possible?" "They feed on quantum potential energy," Webb explained, though Elena could see he was struggling to translate concepts that had no human equivalent. "Every living thing exists in a state of infinite possibility. What it could become, what it could create, what it could inspire. The Devourers don't just eat flesh and blood. They consume those possibilities themselves, leaving behind zones of absolute cosmic death." Elena felt a chill that went deeper than bone. "And they have 7 dragon children." "Not just any dragon children," Webb corrected. "According to Drakmer, dragons are unique in this galaxy. They're living repositories of what he calls creation fire, the fundamental force that allows new life and new possibilities to emerge from chaos. A young dragon contains enough creative potential to birth entire star systems." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. If the Devourers consume that potential, they'll become powerful enough to spread their dead zones across entire galactic arms, Webb finished. "This isn't just about saving 7 children, Captain. This is about preventing the death of every possible future in this part of the universe." Commander Torres chose that moment to contact them from orbit. His voice crackled through the communication array with barely controlled tension. "Captain, we've completed our analysis of the Devourer home system using Drakmer's navigational data. The situation is worse than we thought." Elena activated the link to the Endeavor, and Torres's haggard face appeared on her portable screen. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept since they had arrived in the system. "Report, Commander. The system Drakmer described is approximately 47 light-years from our current position. Long-range sensors show a binary pulsar configuration that should be impossible. Two neutron stars orbiting so close together they should have merged eons ago. But something is keeping them artificially separated. The Devourers? That's our best guess. The entire system appears to be some kind of massive energy harvesting operation. They're using the gravitational stress between the pulsars to generate power on a scale we can barely comprehend. And Captain, Torres paused, swallowing hard. The energy signature suggests there are thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of absolute impossibility settling on her shoulders. The Endeavor was a science vessel with a crew of 230. They had basic defensive systems and a small complement of security personnel, but they were equipped for exploration, not warfare against cosmic horrors. There's more, Torres continued. Chief Engineer Park has been analyzing the data Drachmer provided about Devourer technology. They don't just feed on biological life. They can drain the energy from our ship systems as well. Standard shields and weapons may actually make us easier targets. Elena looked up at Drachmer's massive eye, which had been watching her throughout the conversation. The ancient dragon's breathing had grown more labored over the past few hours, and the energy streams from the healing spires were flickering erratically. Small one, Drachmer whispered, his voice weaker than before. I know what you're thinking. The task seems impossible, the enemy too powerful. But there is something you do not yet understand about your species. What do you mean? In my 50,000 years, I have watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Some were mighty beyond measure, beings of pure energy who could reshape matter with thought alone. Others possessed technology that could move stars or fold space like paper. All of them fell to the Devourers in the end. Elena felt her heart sinking. Then, what makes you think we can succeed where they failed? Drachmer's eye focused on her with surprising intensity for a dying creature. Because they all tried to fight the Devourers with power, with force, with technology. But the Devourers grow stronger from such opposition. They feed on the very energies that fuel advanced civilizations. Then, how we fight them? You do not fight them, Drachmer said. You do something they have never encountered in all their eons of existence. You do something so fundamentally alien to their nature that they cannot comprehend it, much less counter it. Webb leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his exhaustion. What could possibly be alien to creatures that have conquered most of the galaxy? Drachmer's answer changed everything. Hope. Elena stared at the ancient dragon, certain she had misunderstood. I'm sorry, what? The Devourers exist in a state of absolute despair, Drachmer explained. They're beings who have given up on the possibility of anything better. They feed on entropy because they believe that decay and death are the only true constants in the universe. They have never encountered a species that maintains hope in the face of absolute impossibility. But hope isn't a weapon, Elena protested. Isn't it? Drachmer's voice carried a note of ancient wisdom. Your species has barely begun to explore the galaxy. Yet you came here, one small ship, in response to the distress call of a creature you had never seen before. You are now planning to face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations 1,000,000 times more advanced than yours. And you're doing it to save children that aren't even your own species. Elena felt something stirring in her chest, something warm and fierce that had nothing to do with logic or tactical analysis. That's just who we are. We don't abandon people who need help. Exactly, Drachmer breathed. And that is why you might succeed where all others have failed. The Devourers drain energy from despair, from acceptance of defeat, from the surrender of possibility. But hope, true hope, the kind that persists even when all evidence suggests it should not. Hope is the one force in the universe they cannot consume. Dr. Webb was furiously taking notes, his mind racing to understand the implications. You're suggesting that our emotional state could actually provide some kind of protection against their feeding mechanisms? More than protection, Drachmer replied. Hope generates its own energy, quantum creativity at the fundamental level of reality. The more impossible your situation, the more powerful that energy becomes. And you humans seem to specialize in hoping for impossible things. Elena turned to Torres on the communication link. Commander, I want you to contact Earth. Send them everything we've learned about the Devourers and our situation. But also send them this message. We're going to save those dragon children, and we're going to come home alive. Not because we have a plan that makes sense, but because that's what humans do. Torres stared at her through the screen for a long moment. Captain, with all due respect, that sounds more like delusion than hope. Elena smiled for the first time since arriving in the system. Maybe, but delusion that saves 7 young dragons and prevents the death of half the galaxy sounds like the best kind of delusion to me. Over the next several hours, Elena and her crew worked to prepare for what everyone understood would be either humanity's greatest triumph or its most spectacular failure. The Endeavor's weapons were modified based on Drakmar's knowledge of Devourer weaknesses, not to inflict damage, but to project the kind of quantum uncertainty that hope generated. Chief Engineer Park had managed to reconfigure their shield generators to create what she called probability barriers, fields of pure potential that would theoretically confuse the Devourer's ability to drain energy from despair. Whether the system would actually work remained to be seen. The navigation computer has plotted a course to the Devourer's system, reported Lieutenant Shun. Transit time at maximum warp is 73 hours. But, Captain, we'll be arriving with no backup, no support, and no real plan beyond hoping that hope itself is enough to save us. Elena nodded, accepting the reality of their situation. Then, we'd better make sure our hope burns brighter than their despair. As the Endeavor's crew made final preparations for departure, Elena returned to Drakmar's side one last time. The ancient dragon's condition had deteriorated dramatically. The healing spires were failing one by one, and his breathing had become irregular and shallow. I will not survive to see the outcome of your mission, Drakmar said, each word requiring visible effort. But know this, small one, in 50,000 years, I have never felt the kind of hope that radiates from your species. Whatever happens, you have already given an old dragon something he thought he would never experience again before his flame was extinguished. Elena reached out and placed her hand on one of Drakmar's massive scales. The surface was warm, like touching the hull of a ship that had been sitting in sunlight for hours. We won't let your children die alone and afraid. I promise you that. I know, Drakmar whispered. And that promise, impossible as it may be to keep, contains more power than all the weapons and shields ever created. As Elena prepared to return to her ship, Drakmar spoke one final time. There is something else. Something I have not told you about my children. Elena paused, sensing this was important. They are not just my offspring, Drakmar explained. They're the last 7 dragons in the universe. If they die, our species dies with them. And if dragons disappear from the galaxy forever, the creative force that allows new life to emerge from the void will be diminished by orders of magnitude. Elena felt the true weight of their mission settling over her like a shroud made of neutron star material. You're saying that if you fail, the universe itself begins to die, Drakmar confirmed. Not all at once, but slowly, over millions of years, as the capacity for new life gradually fades. The Devourers know this. It is why they took my children rather than simply killing them outright. They want to savor the death of hope itself. Elena stood in silence for several long moments, processing the magnitude of what she had learned. Then, remarkably, she began to laugh. Captain, Webb asked, concerned that the stress might have finally broken her. Don't you see? Elena said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. They've made a fundamental error in judgment. They think that learning how impossible our situation really is will crush our hope. But they don't understand humans at all. How do you mean? Elena's grin was savage and beautiful at the same time. The more impossible something is, the more we want to do it. They just gave us the ultimate motivation, saving not just 7 dragon children, but the creative future of the entire universe. A human being couldn't ask for better stakes than that. As the Endeavor prepared to leave orbit and begin its journey to the heart of darkness where the Devourers waited, Elena felt something she had never experienced before. Not just hope, but the kind of absolute certainty that came from knowing that failure simply wasn't an option. They were about to venture into a region of space where hope itself was supposed to die. But they were bringing something with them that had never existed in that terrible place before. 230 human beings who had decided that the impossible was just another word for challenge accepted. The ancient dragon Drakmer watched the human ship disappear into the void, and for the first time in centuries, he smiled. His children were still in mortal danger. The universe itself hung in the balance, and the odds against success were literally astronomical. But for the first time since the Devourers had taken his young ones, Drakmer felt something stronger than despair. He felt what the humans called hope, and it burned in his ancient heart like a star being born. The journey to the Devourer system took 73 hours of the most intense preparation in the history of human space exploration. Every department aboard the Endeavor worked around the clock to modify their systems based on Drakmer's ancient knowledge and humanity's innovative spirit. Chief Engineer Sarah Park had barely slept since leaving the Dragon planet. Her teams had completely rewired the ship's power distribution network to channel what they were calling hope energy, quantum uncertainty fields generated by the crew's collective determination to succeed against impossible odds. The theoretical framework is completely insane, Park explained to Captain Vasquez during one of their planning sessions. We're essentially weaponizing the human capacity for irrational optimism. By all known laws of physics, this should be completely impossible. Elena studied the engineering schematics displayed on the holographic projector in the conference room. But you think it will work? Captain, 3 days ago I would have said absolutely not. But after interfacing with Drakmer's memories of how the Devourers operate, I'm starting to think that impossible might be exactly what we need. Their entire feeding mechanism is based on draining energy from resignation and despair. If we can generate fields of pure possibility, the quantum state that exists when someone refuses to accept that they can't win, we might actually be able to disrupt their feeding process. Dr. Webb looked up from his xenobiology research. I've been analyzing the biological data on the dragon children that Drakmer shared with us. They're remarkable creatures, but they're also incredibly fragile right now. Young dragons go through what Drakmer calls the kindling, a period where their internal fire is just beginning to develop. During this phase, they're essentially quantum batteries of pure creative potential, which makes them perfect food for the Devourers, Elena observed grimly. Exactly. But it also means that if we can reach them while they're still alive, their presence alone will amplify whatever hope energy we're able to generate. 7 young dragons plus 230 determined humans might create a resonance cascade that even the Devourers can't absorb. Commander Torres had been notably quiet during most of the planning sessions, but Elena could see the conflict in his expression. Finally, he spoke up. Captain, I have to ask, are we really going to risk the lives of our entire crew based on theoretical physics and the emotional states of mythological creatures? Elena looked around the conference table at her senior staff. They were exhausted, terrified, and facing an enemy that had consumed entire galactic civilizations. But she could also see something else in their eyes, the same stubborn refusal to quit that had driven humans from caves to starships in just a few thousand years. Commander Torres, let me ask you something. 3 months ago, did you believe that dragons were real? No, ma'am. A week ago, did you think it was possible to weaponize hope? Absolutely not. And yet here we are, planning to do exactly that. Elena stood, looking out at the swirling hyperspace tunnel surrounding their ship. The universe keeps showing us that our assumptions about what's possible are wrong. Maybe it's time we started embracing that fact instead of fighting it. The ship's intercom crackled to life with the voice of Lieutenant Shun from a bridge. Captain, we're approaching the edge of the Devourer system. You want to see this? Elena and her staff quickly made their way to the bridge, where the main view screen showed something that defied description. The binary pulsar system hung before them like a cosmic torture device. Two neutron stars locked in an impossible dance, their gravitational fields creating ripples in space-time that were visible to the naked eye. But it was what surrounded the pulsars that truly horrified them. Vast structures of crystalline black material formed a web around the entire system, feeding on the immense energies generated by the gravitational stress. And everywhere the structures touched space, stars simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not collapsed, but erased from reality as if they had never been born. "My God," whispered Torres. "How many worlds has this system consumed?" Chun ran a quick analysis on the sensor readings. Based on the gravitational anomalies, this system originally contained at least 40 planets and hundreds of moons. Now there's nothing but the pulsars and whatever those structures are. Dr. Webb was studying the biological readings with growing excitement and horror. "Captain, I'm detecting the dragon children. They're being held in 7 separate crystalline chambers near the center of the web. But their life signs are fluctuating wildly." Elena felt her heart rate accelerate. "Are they dying?" "No," Webb replied, his voice filled with scientific fascination and human revulsion. "They're being kept in a state of perpetual terror. The devourers are feeding on their fear and despair while keeping them conscious and aware. It's the most sophisticated torture system I've ever encountered." The implications of what they were seeing began to sink in. The dragon children weren't just being held prisoner. They were being used as living batteries to power the devourers' consumption of entire star systems. "Captain," Chen reported, "we're being scanned. Something in that structure knows we're here." Elena made a command decision that would either save the galaxy or destroy her ship and crew. "All stop. Shields up, but keep weapons power down. We go in broadcasting hope, not aggression." "Mom," Torres asked, clearly thinking his captain had lost her mind. "Think about it, Commander. Every other species that came here probably arrived with massive fleets, advanced weapons, and battle plans. They try to fight the Devourers with force, and they all fail because the Devourers feed on that kind of destructive energy." Elena turned to address her bridge crew directly. "We're going to try something that's never been attempted in the history of this galaxy. We're going to approach them with nothing but hope and the absolute certainty that we're going to save those children. Chief Park, activate the hope field generators." The ship's lights dimmed as power flowed into the modified shield systems. Suddenly, the Endeavor began to glow with a soft, warm light that seemed to emanate from the hull itself. It was beautiful and impossible, like seeing sunshine in the depths of space. "Hope field generators are online and stable," Park reported from engineering. "I can't believe I just said those words." Elena opened a channel to the entire ship. "All hands, this is the captain. In approximately 10 minutes, we're going to enter the most dangerous region of space ever explored by our species. We're going to face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations 1,000,000 times more advanced than ours. We're going to attempt a rescue that violates every known law of physics and common sense." She paused, looking around the bridge at her crew. "We're also going to succeed. Not because we have better weapons or superior technology, but because we have something the Devourers have never encountered before, the absolute refusal to accept that good people should suffer while we have the power to help them." Elena could feel something stirring throughout the ship, a warm energy that seemed to flow between crew members like an electric current. "I want everyone to focus on one simple fact. 7 children who have never done anything wrong are being tortured by monsters, and we're the only ones who can save them. Hold that thought. Make it burn in your hearts like a star. And remember, humans don't abandon family, even when that family happens to be dragons." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The hope field generators began putting out energy readings that Park had calculated should be theoretically impossible. The ship's hull began to glow even brighter, and the lights seemed to push back the darkness surrounding the Devourer structures. "Captain," Chun reported with awe in her voice, "we're getting a response from the structure, but it's not aggressive. It's confused. Elena smiled grimly. Good. Confusion is what we want. Take us in 1/4 impulse power. As the Endeavor moved deeper into the system, the true scale of the Devourer web became apparent. The crystalline structures stretched for millions of kilometers, forming geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, creating visual distortions that made the ship's sensors struggle to maintain accurate readings. We're being monitored by hundreds of individual consciousnesses, Webb reported, his voice strained from trying to process the xenobiological data. The Devourers aren't a hive mind. They're individual entities working in perfect coordination. And, Captain, they're ancient beyond measure. Some of these minds have been active for millions of years. Are they communicating with us? Not exactly. They're trying to understand what we are. I'm getting the impression that our hope field is causing them significant confusion. They keep trying to drain our despair, but there isn't any to drain. Elena felt a moment of fierce satisfaction. How long until we reach the Dragon Children? At current speed, approximately 12 minutes, Chen replied. But, Captain, the closer we get to the center of the web, the stronger the gravitational distortions become. The pulsars are generating tidal forces that should have torn our ship apart by now. The hope field is protecting us, Park called out from engineering. The quantum uncertainty we're generating is somehow dampening the gravitational effects. I have no idea how, but it's working. Elena watched the main view screen as they approached the heart of the Devourer structure. The 7 crystalline chambers holding the Dragon Children came into view, and her heart nearly broke at what she saw. Each young dragon was barely the size of the Endeavor itself, but they were clearly Drachmar's offspring, scales that shifted color like living rainbows, wings that seemed to be made of condensed starlight, and eyes that burned with intelligence and terror in equal measure. They know we're here, Webb reported, tears streaming down his face as he monitored the children's biological responses. Their fear is diminishing. Just the sight of our ship is giving them hope. Elena felt the hope field generators surge with new power as the Dragon Children's renewed optimism began to resonate with the crew's determination. The Endeavor was now glowing so brightly that it looked like a miniature star moving through the cosmic web. Captain, Torres called out with urgency. The Devourers are responding to our presence. They're moving to intercept. Elena looked at the tactical display and felt her blood turn to ice. Hundreds of individual Devourers were detaching from the web structure and moving toward them. Each creature was the size of a small moon, composed of living darkness that seemed to absorb light and hope alike. All hands, battle stations, Elena ordered. But remember, we're not here to fight. We're here to save 7 children who believe we can do the impossible. The first wave of Devourers reached the Endeavor and immediately began trying to drain the ship's energy. But instead of finding the usual despair and fear that powered their feeding process, they encountered something they had never experienced in millions of years of existence. Pure, irrational, human optimism. The hope field held, but Elena could see the strain on her crew. Facing the Devourers up close was like staring into the absolute negation of everything good in the universe. These creatures existed in a state of cosmic despair, so profound that their very presence made hope seem like a childish delusion. I can't maintain this, gasped Chief Park from engineering. The field is fluctuating. We need more hope energy, or we're going to lose cohesion. Elena made a decision that would be remembered in human history for as long as the species survived. She opened a ship-wide communication channel and began to speak not as a captain, but as a human being who refused to let children suffer. All hands, this is Elena Vasquez. I want to tell you about my daughter. Her name is Maria. She's 7 years old, and she lives on Earth with her grandmother while I explore the galaxy. Every night before I go to sleep, no matter where I am in the universe, I think about tucking her in a bed and reading her a story about brave knights and magical creatures. Elena's voice carried throughout the ship, and she could feel the crew's attention focusing on her words. Maria believes that her mother is a hero who flies through space saving people. She doesn't know that most days I feel scared and uncertain, that I make decisions based on incomplete information and hope for the best. All she knows is that when people are in trouble, someone should help them. The hope field began to stabilize as Elena continued. Right now, there are 7 children trapped in this nightmare. They're not human children, but they're children nonetheless, young and innocent and terrified. Maria would want us to save them. Every child on Earth would want us to save them. And we're going to do exactly that, because that's what heroes do in the stories we tell our children. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every member of the Endeavor's crew began thinking about the children in their own lives, sons and daughters, nieces and nephews, students they had taught, young people they had mentored. The hope field blazed with the combined power of 230 human hearts that refused to let innocence suffer. The devourers surrounding the ship recoiled as if they had been physically struck. For the first time in their existence, they were experiencing something that actively damaged them. The absolute certainty that good would triumph over evil, no matter how impossible the odds. "It's working," Shun shouted from the communication station. "The devourers are retreating. The hope field is actually hurting them." Elena felt a moment of fierce triumph, but she knew they weren't finished yet. "Take us to those chambers. We're bringing those children home." As the Endeavor moved toward the crystalline prisons holding the dragon children, Elena knew that they had crossed a threshold from which there would be no return. Humanity had just discovered that their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their stubborn refusal to accept that good people should suffer while they had the power to help. The real battle was just beginning, but for the first time since entering the system, Elena believed they might actually win. The approach to the crystalline chambers holding the dragon children proved to be the most harrowing experience any member of the Endeavor's crew had ever faced. As they drew closer to the heart of the devourer web, the very fabric of reality seemed to twist and buckle around them. "Captain," Lieutenant Shun reported, her voice strained from the effort of maintaining communications through the spatial distortions. "The dragon children are responding to our presence. Their biosigns are stabilizing, and they're trying to communicate." Dr. Webb was hunched over his xenobiology console, tears streaming down his face as he processed the telepathic emanations from the young dragons. "They're singing, Captain. Even trapped in those horror chambers, they're singing songs of hope because they know we're coming for them." Elena felt her own eyes burning with unshed tears. The dragon children's songs weren't audible in any conventional sense, but somehow every member of the crew could feel them. Melodies of starlight and possibility that cut through the cosmic despair surrounding the devourer structure like swords made of pure emotion. "Chief Park, status report on the Hope Field generators. Field strength is holding at 112% of theoretical maximum." Park replied from engineering, her voice filled with wonder. "Captain, according to everything I know about physics, what we're doing right now should be impossible. The quantum uncertainty field we're generating are actually getting stronger the closer we get to those children." Elena nodded, understanding dawning in her mind. "It's not just our hope anymore. The dragons are amplifying it. We're creating a resonance cascade between human determination and dragon possibility." Commander Torres had been monitoring the tactical situation, and his expression was grim despite their apparent success. "Captain, the devourers aren't retreating anymore. They're regrouping. I count over 3,000 individual entities surrounding us at maximum sensor range." Elena studied the tactical display, seeing the truth of their situation with crystal clarity. The devourers had initially been caught off guard by humanity's hope field, but they were ancient beings with millions of years of experience. They were adapting. "They're going to try to overwhelm us through sheer numbers," she realized. "Even if our hope field can repel individual devourers, 3,000 of them might be able to drain us dry through collective feeding." "There's something else," Webb added, his voice heavy with new understanding. "I've been analyzing the structure of the crystalline chambers. They're not just prisons, they're amplification systems. The Devourers have been using the dragon children's terror to power their feeding for weeks now. If they can force those children back into despair, the resulting energy discharge will fuel their expansion into neighboring star systems. Elena felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders once again. This wasn't just about rescuing 7 children anymore. It was about preventing the Devourers from gaining enough power to consume entire galactic regions. "How long until the Devourers complete their regrouping?" she asked Torres. "At their current rate of movement, approximately 8 minutes until they reach optimal attack formation." Elena made the kind of command decision that defined the difference between good officers and legendary ones. "All hands, prepare for emergency transport operations. We're not just rescuing those children, we're taking them with us when we leave this system." "Captain," Torres protested, "our transporters aren't designed to handle entities as large as young dragons. Each one of them is nearly the size of a shuttlecraft." "Then, we improvise," Elena replied. "Chief Park, can you reconfigure the transporter systems to work in conjunction with the Hope Field generators?" Park's response came after a moment of frantic calculation. "Theoretically, yes. If we channel the quantum uncertainty fields through the transporter matrix, we might be able to create what I'm calling possibility beams, transport streams that exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Explain that in terms the rest of us can't understand. We transport the dragon children by making it temporarily possible for them to exist in 2 places at once, in the crystalline chambers and aboard our ship. Then we collapse the quantum superposition so they only exist aboard the Endeavor." Dr. Webb looked up from his console with excitement and terror warring in his expression. "Captain, that's not transportation. That's reality manipulation at the fundamental quantum level. We'd essentially be willing those children into safety through pure determination." Elena felt a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth despite the desperate nature of their situation. "Dr. Webb, 3 days ago you told me that weaponizing hope was impossible. Now you're about to help us transport 7 dragon children through force of will alone. I think we've established that impossible is just another word for challenging." The ship's intercom crackled to life with Chief Park's voice from engineering. "Captain, the possibility transporters are online and calibrated. But I have to warn you, this has never been attempted before. We could accidentally scatter those children across multiple dimensions or collapse their quantum signatures entirely." Elena opened a ship-wide communication channel once again. "All hands, this is the captain. In approximately 5 minutes, we're going to attempt the most audacious rescue operation in the history of our species. We're going to transport 7 dragon children out of crystalline prisons using technology that shouldn't exist, powered by emotions that shouldn't be quantifiable, while surrounded by cosmic horrors that shouldn't be vulnerable to human optimism." She paused, looking around the bridge at her crew. Every face showed the same mixture of terror and determination that she felt in her own heart. "But I want you to remember something. Those children have been singing songs of hope for weeks, even while being tortured by entities that represent the negation of everything good in the universe. If they can maintain hope in the face of absolute despair, then we can certainly maintain it in the face of impossible odds." Elena could feel the hope field generators surging with new power as her words resonated throughout the ship. "I want everyone to focus on one simple image. 7 young dragons flying free through space, their scales catching starlight as they soar toward home. Hold that image in your minds. Make it real through the sheer force of believing it's possible." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Endeavor began to glow even brighter as 230 human minds focused on the same impossible goal with absolute conviction. "Transport sequence initiating," Park announced from engineering. "Possibility beams targeting the first crystalline chamber." On the main view screen, they could see streams of golden light reaching out from the Endeavor toward the nearest prison. But these weren't ordinary transporter beams. They sparkled and danced like aurora light, shifting through colors that had no names because they existed only in the space between reality and possibility. Contact established with the first dragon child, Webb reported, his voice filled with wonder. Her name is Starweaver, and she's thanking us. She says she never doubted that someone would come. Elena felt her heart clench with emotion. Beam her aboard. For a moment that lasted an eternity, nothing happened. Then, reality seemed to hiccup, and suddenly, a young dragon was materialized in Cargo Bay 2. She was beautiful beyond description, scales that shifted from deep blue to silver like ocean waves under moonlight, wings that seemed to be woven from concentrated starlight, and eyes that held the wisdom of ancient stars and the innocence of youth in equal measure. Transport successful, Park announced, her voice cracking with emotion. 1 down, 6 to go. But the Devourers had not been idle during the first rescue. As the possibility beam reached for the second crystalline chamber, the creatures began their coordinated attack. Thousands of entities of living darkness swept toward the Endeavor like a cosmic tsunami of despair. Multiple Devourers incoming, Torres announced. They're trying to disrupt our transport operations by overwhelming the Hope Field. Elena watched the tactical display as wave after wave of creatures approached their position. Each individual Devourer was a moon-sized entity of concentrated nihilism, and together they represented enough destructive power to sterilize entire star systems. Maintain transport operations, Elena ordered. All other systems channel power to the Hope Field generators. The ship's lights dimmed as every available energy source was redirected to maintaining their protective field. The second dragon child, a young male whose scales burned like captured firelight, materialized in Cargo Bay 3 just as the first wave of Devourers reached the ship. The impact was unlike anything any of them had experienced before. It wasn't a physical collision, but rather a direct assault on the crew's capacity for hope itself. Suddenly, every mistake they had ever made, every fear they had ever harbored, every moment of doubt or despair came flooding back with overwhelming intensity. I can't. The field is collapsing, gasped Chief Park from engineering. The Devourers are feeding on our memories of failure. They're using our own past against us. Elena felt the crushing weight of cosmic despair pressing down on her consciousness like a black hole made of concentrated hopelessness. For a moment, she found herself remembering every mission that had gone wrong, every person she had failed to save, every choice that had led to tragedy. But then she heard something that changed everything, the song of dragon children echoing through the ship's corridors. Starweaver and her brother were singing together, their voices harmonizing in melodies that spoke of endless possibility and unbreakable bonds between those who refused to surrender to darkness. Listen, Elena called out over the ship's intercom, her voice cutting through the psychic assault. Listen to them sing. Those children have been tortured by these creatures for weeks, and they're still singing. They're still believing that good will triumph over evil. Elena forced herself to stand straighter, pushing back against the overwhelming despair. If dragon children can maintain hope while being tortured by cosmic horrors, then we can certainly maintain it while rescuing them. All hands focus on their voices. Let their songs remind you why we're here. The effect was immediate and profound. As the crew listened to the dragon children's songs of hope and defiance, the memories of past failures began to lose their power. The hope field stabilized, then began to grow stronger than before. Third transport operation commencing. Park announced, her voice steadier now. The dragon songs are actually amplifying our hope field. Their presence aboard the ship is making us stronger. One by one, the remaining dragon children were transported aboard the Endeavor. Each rescue became easier as the young dragons already aboard the ship added their voices to the growing chorus of hope and determination. Moon Whisperer, whose scales reflected the light of distant galaxies. Stormheart, whose wings crackled with barely contained lightning. Dawnbreaker, whose very presence seemed to warm the air around her. Shadow Dancer, who somehow combined darkness and light in patterns that defied optical physics. And, finally, Dreamweaver, the youngest of the 7, whose songs contained melodies that seemed to reshape reality itself. As the last dragon child materialized safely aboard the ship, the Devourer's assault reached its crescendo. Thousands of creatures of living despair surrounded the Endeavor, pouring their accumulated nihilism into a final, desperate attempt to drain the hope field and recapture their prisoners. For a moment that felt like centuries, the outcome hung in perfect balance. On one side, millions of years of accumulated despair and the absolute certainty that entropy would always triumph over creation. On the other side, 230 humans and 7 dragon children who simply refused to accept that good people should suffer while they had the power to help. Then Dreamweaver, the youngest of the dragon children, began to sing a new song, a melody so beautiful and impossible that it seemed to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. It was a song about a small blue planet where creatures called humans had learned to reach for the stars not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they had never learned how to quit. The song spread throughout the ship, carried by the voices of her siblings and the hearts of the human crew. It told the story of a species that had climbed from caves to starships in just a few thousand years, driven by nothing more than curiosity and the stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better than today. And as that impossible song filled the void around the Endeavor, something unprecedented happened. The Devourers, creatures that had consumed civilizations for millions of years, began to remember what they had been before they surrendered to despair. Deep in their collective consciousness, memories stirred of a time when they too had believed that the universe could be more than just entropy and decay. The hope field didn't just repel the Devourers, it began to heal them. For the first time in eons, the creatures of living darkness felt something other than hunger and emptiness. They felt the possibility that existence could be about creation rather than consumption. "Captain," Webb announced, his voice filled with wonder, "the Devourers are withdrawing." "No, not withdrawing, they're transforming. The hope field is causing some kind of quantum restructuring at the cellular level." Elena watched in amazement as the creatures that had threatened to consume half the galaxy began to change before her eyes. The living darkness that had defined them for millions of years started to lighten, becoming something new. Not creatures of despair, but entities of possibility. "All hands, prepare for departure," Elena ordered. "We're taking these children home." As the Endeavor powered up its engines and prepared to leave the system that had been a monument to cosmic horror, Elena realized that they had accomplished something far greater than a simple rescue mission. They had proven that hope was not just an emotion, but a fundamental force of nature, one that could triumph over even the most ancient and powerful manifestations of despair. The journey back to Drakmar would take time, but Elena knew that when they arrived, they would be bringing more than just 7 rescued children. They would be bringing proof that the universe was not doomed to decay and entropy, but was instead filled with infinite possibility for those brave enough to believe in it. Behind them, the former Devourer system began to bloom with new life as the transformed entities started the work of creation rather than destruction. It would take millions of years to undo the damage they had caused, but for the first time in eons, they had hoped that it was possible. And in the cargo bays of a human exploration vessel, 7 young dragons sang songs of home and heroes, their voices carrying across the void toward a dying father who would live just long enough to see his children safe and to know that the universe still had room for miracles.